Welcome to Coffee Date with Spirit. Grab your favorite mug and get cozy while your hosts, Kristen Forno and Amy Potter, two maybe not so ordinary mystics, chat about the extraordinary magic that can happen when you invite spirit into your life.
Well, hello.
Hi. Hello,
Thank
Kristen.
you for joining. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I couldn't be more excited to actually have you here today. For everybody listening, we have my friend and teacher, Daven Lee, joining us today. I thought that this time of year in particular would be a beautiful time to invite her wisdom into this podcast because she is a priestess of the Yin, and I'll read her biography in a minute, but I just thought her work in particular, as we are heading, or we're really in the wheel of the year in winter already, in this is deep place of hibernation and receiving and rest and stillness. And so Daven's work with the Yin, I thought would really supports us all year round. But I thought it'd be a great time to introduce it as we are working with the dark half of the year. So I'm going to read Daven's bio right now.
Perfect.
And just as a side note for those who are following along on the podcast, I think we've used Oracle deck a couple times already. So just to tie it all in, she's already been in our podcast in spirit. Spirit was with us ahead of time. So here is Daven's bio. Daven is a sex and intimacy coach, but she has a very unique approach to sex and sexuality. She is passionate about supporting people to connect with their sexual energy, or what she calls the sexual soul. Her practice is unlike any other approach to sexuality. She orients to the sexual soul as the taproot to our deepest truth, our creative essence, and the key to our sovereignty and freedom, as well as our delight and pleasure. As a guide and teacher, she offers a deeply feminine view of the world that is both empowering and nurturing, grounded in the body and trusting of the soul. She works one-on-one or with couples, guiding sensitive, intuitive clients with intimacy and relationship challenges to trust the knowing of their bodies, the wisdom of their desires, and the power of their gifts. Her gentle and potent coaching and healing practice is grounded in what she calls the power of the Yin. In a world where the Yang has been overvalued for its emphasis on competition, linear thinking, action, and immediate results, we haven't been conditioned to understand, cultivate, and embody this kind of power. Instead, we've been trained to see it as weak, irrational, and insubstantial. How do we begin to access a power that is ineffable, centered in the body, both ancient and emergent? Daven thinks of herself as a priestess of the Yin, holding space and gently guiding people to find the answer to this question within themselves. And she's created, and I love it so much, a gorgeous 58-card guidance deck so people can develop, engage with, and embody their Yin power, the power of the Yin Oracle deck.
Amazing. That's an amazing bio. I love it.
Oh. And Daven is an amazing human being with whom I've had the fortune to work many, many times now. I think it was 2019 or 20. I worked with Daven. It was through her Qigong practice. I had never done Qigong before. As somebody who is energetically as sensitive as I am, my mind was blown to experience the subtlety of how energy can move in the body. So that was my first experience with Daven. And then I've been fortunate enough to do 2 of her 6 weeks Hello Sexual Soul program. And I am astounded at the depth of her wisdom and the importance of the wisdom she has to share in cultivating relationship with the self and our own creative energies. So having said that, I would love for you just to introduce yourself, Daven, and maybe talk about your work a little bit. I know we were going to do a little practice. We're going to work with your Oracle deck. We haven't put a lot of parameters and structure on our conversation, and I just want to kind of go into the flow of things, and I just want it to be a really organic conversation about the magic of your work.
Well,
nothing small. It's just like it's big.
Speaking of receiving, I'm just receiving all these beautiful things you just said, Amy, and just feeling so touched by it and feeling so gratified that what you're describing exactly matches how I want my work to be received, and what I feel that its power is, and how it has been powerful for me, because my work comes directly out of my own practice, my own inquiry, my own journey with my own sexual energy and with energy in general and with coming into the body. And so it's beautiful to hear. So thank you for that. I mean, I could add things, but we've said a lot. I feel like I want to see if Kristen wants to jump in, since she's playing the part of people who haven't heard of me at all. And that's so great to have somebody here who's doing that.
I love it.
And
Well,
what-
I would
Yeah.
love to ask you, how did this idea of sexual energy come about in your practice? I mean, it is very unique, possibly because I come from a very masculine driven background in a corporate environment for 30 years, and only in the last decade getting into my spiritual body again, turning. So I'm fascinated by the idea of it all. Like, how did you get into this particular space?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, this comes out of my own journey, of course. And it started with, well, I mean, of course, it started when I was whatever, however little, or before I even came, right? But I was in an unhappy marriage, and I had a lot of sexual energy, and I really wanted to be expressing myself that way. And my husband and I, it just like we never connected that way. I mean, at the very beginning, we had a good time, of course, but it ended pretty quickly in the relationship. And I just remember wondering, am I going to need to sacrifice this part of myself in service to this relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like a horrible trade-off. And I had a beautiful therapist who I worked with for many years, and she couldn't really give me any guidance about this. And all of our peer group, we were in our 30s by then, we had kids. Nobody was having sex. It was just sort of something that fell by the wayside.
It's
And
so common. It's so
yeah.
common. Yes.
And it also felt like something where people were like, oh, well, that's just what happens. And also I felt like immature or something, that's what I wanted, or that was important to me, or that I had fantasies, or like it seemed like a juvenile kind of thing to focus on. And ultimately my marriage did end, and somebody, the phrase I was going to use is turned me on to, and they did turn me on to it, turned me on to a teacher who was both a Qigong teacher and taught sacred Taoist sexuality.
Wow.
And I was just like, yes, that is such a full yes for me. And what I discovered is that in Taoism, and as well as other wisdom traditions like Tantra and things like that, in many wisdom traditions, there is an acknowledgement that it's just a whole different worldview around sex and sexuality, which is that our sexual energy is actually our life force essence. And in Taoism, there's just this beautiful story of, at the moment of our conception, heaven plants a seed in the center of our being. And this is our unique seed. Nobody else has this coding that has come together in this moment. And I think of it like the seed, the egg and sperm come together of our parents, our biological parents, and it's like a big bang begins. And that big bang of energy is literally called the Jing in Chinese medicine. It's also the energy of the kidneys, which, by the way, is a very yin. Kidneys govern winter. In other words, the yin. And our sexual energy is what makes us creators. So it's not just about the bedroom and getting off and being turned on, and the things that feel compartmentalized and that have been actually kept very juvenile in our culture and in our psyches. It actually is not only front and center, but it is the ground. It is the grounding energy that supports everything that we do. And
Wow.
again, in Chinese medicine, the kidneys are known as the mother organ of the rest of the body. And so if the other organ systems are struggling, they draw on the kidney chi. They use the Jing. The Jing is the underlying energy for all the other organ systems. And in Chinese medicine, they orient to the Jing as that is the state of your health. How is your sexual health?
Wow.
And it doesn't mean that you have to have a great sex life, but it does mean that you don't shut down this energy, that you cultivate it, that you respect it, that you let it live and express in some form. And for me, that powerful, reorienting completely takes it out of the realm of shame. It's like, no, this is our original blessing.
This is our life. Like this is our aliveness.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
then when I work with clients around with this orientation, it leads everywhere because it means every expression of themselves.
Right.
And there's so many ways in which we suppress ourselves, even, wait, this isn't about sex, of course, but we still suppress this unique part of our being, and we thread it all together with this understanding. It creates this beautiful invitation and permission to really come into your full expression. And that means being turned on, right?
Yeah, and to enjoy our bodies, I mean, like to really deeply be connected to our bodies. So much of our society, I think, has us pulled out of our bodies. I want you to talk a little bit about, if you would, yin and yang. Part of your teachings and your practices for me was to understand how the yin, this receiving side of us, this surrendering side of us, how that plays into my sense of my body, my own creative powers, and my own sexuality. Like I realized through our time together that our society values, like your bio said, do. Like I'm doing. So like where in my mind and my body am I receiving? And to truly receive sexual pleasure with a partner or yourself, you have to be in a place of receptivity and connection. And so it really started to shift. I said, wait a minute, like no wonder why like sex life isn't as vibrant as it could be, because I'm always like doing, like my schedule is just so insane that I'm not taking time to take a breath, to pause, to recharge, and to give myself that space to receive. And then also on top of that is all of the societal pressures to be vulnerable enough to receive pleasure from somebody else. Yeah. Like that takes a huge amount of trust and body acceptance and all of these things. So like your work for me really started to make me aware of the areas that I needed to accept myself. So anyway, so having said that, I would love to just back up a little bit and just have you give a context of what is yin energy and what is yang energy, and what does that look like in our lives, and just to kind of frame it that way.
Yeah. Well, and what you shared is so beautiful. Thank you. And I know people listening are going to go, oh my God, thank you for saying that. So yin and yang are the great polarities. And in Taoism, there's the idea of the whole undifferentiated, the Tao. And then that becomes differentiated into yin and yang. And then from there it becomes differentiated into the 5 elements. And from there, the 10,000 things, which I love. But so what that means specifically is, I mean, yin and yang are night and day. They are heat and cold. They are the shady side of the mountain and the sunny side of the mountain. For me, the yin is about the internal and the subtle, the dark, the shadows, the underworld, the intuitive, the non-linear, the mystery, not knowing, the formless, And the yang is the clear, the direction, focus, single pointed focus. It is, as you said, doing and action. It's like the things we can see above ground and out in the full sunlight, which is fun to think about our genitals. When a man has an erection, everybody knows it. If a woman is aroused, we have no idea. It's hidden away
Right.
inside of our body. And actually, I want to say that with both of those states, there's an incredible amount of vulnerability. So when we step into the yang and become visible, that is very vulnerable because the cards are not held close to the chest anymore, right? Everybody can see and judge, and we're vulnerable. And of course, then there's the internal vulnerable, which is for people to know what's happening inside of us. We actually need to bring somebody inside, and that's a very vulnerable thing to do. And both of those, of course, also have incredible power to them. The power of receptivity, the power of an invitation, and of course, the power of penetrating and the power of action. So yeah, that's yin and yang, and it's been extrapolated into a lot of different things from there. It does get associated with masculine and feminine, so the yin becomes kind of conflated with the feminine and the yang with the masculine. And I really, that's not the place I automatically go anymore. I want to be really cautious about that because these energies in and of themselves are neutral and they only exist in relationship to each other because they are constantly shifting into each other. Like that's what that yin yang symbol is.
Yeah.
And so words like feminine and masculine and male and female, obviously, are so loaded. And in terms of the healing that the world needs, it's like you can't have wholeness without these two energies. That's just the bottom line. And they don't need to have labels of gender. And like women, the yin has been devalued. And women have become associated with that. And so that becomes our kind of our flag. That's our team. But a lot of women, and I suspect the three of us included, have very strong yang sides. We get things done. We have a lot of motivation and energy. And so sometimes it can feel, I don't really want to be told that I have masculine qualities personally, but the yang I'm comfortable with. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but that's it because it sort of splits your personality too. You're like, oh, I'm gonna go put my big boy pants on and get stuff done, you know? But like it's just that masculine, feminine. We are a combination. Every individual is an expression of both. So yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea when you used your hands and showed the connection and the tension between it all, that there's a shifting. And I never thought of it as a shifting. I just always thought of it as forces, like the flat 2D image, you know, but you did that. I thought, yeah, there's always this movement going on, certainly within me. And across 50, almost 52 years, it's shifted so much more yin. And it's been, in a way, because, well, I'll tell you, just because this is a fascinating discussion to me anyway, because I, for 49 years, was straight as a female in relationships. And then I met a woman, had a lightning bolt moment of energy before I even saw her. And I switched teams, and I am, I have a partner now, and I'm with a woman, and I left behind heterosexuality. And so all the shame and vulnerability and stuff that comes with being in this body now is wild. And at the same time, I have moved into a yin phase in my life. So it's extremely disorienting with all of that is at play. But somehow it has allowed me the space to go deeper into yin and work with that. and the energy, and certainly with Amy too, for me to work in this way, it's very expansive in this space. So I don't know what that all means in relation to your work, but I do find, you know, a real clear understanding when you're talking about this and your work of how I'm just experiencing all of this myself. And I have no guide for it. Just all kind of one foot in front of the other at this
Well,
point.
you have a lot of guides with it.
Right.
Kristen Spirit.
I know you guys talk about guides all the time. Well, I
Yes.
find what you're saying to me, Kristen, is so exciting, because when we are in that place of supposedly the guideless, what's being guided is the real guidance. You know, we're being able to let go of the outside, right?
I love that.
So that's beautiful.
Thank you for that. That is beautiful. Thank you. Wow. So I just am curious, your work started, you know, at the time of your marriage ending and you were moving into this space. Were you already practicing Qigong, and had you already been in the tarot space, and were you already doing work in this space in your life? And these things kind of came
No.
together?
So the Qigong and the sacred Taoist sexuality started at the same time. And and I would say, in a way similar but different circumstances, what you're describing is coming out of kind of a yang phase and moving into a yin phase in your life. That's what happened with me. So one of the other things, this combination of my marriage, and I was very young in the world. And one of the young things that I was doing that I loved with a passion was figure skating. I was a pretty serious figure skater. And I was starting to get quite a lot of injuries. And initially it was like, you get an injury and you just get up and you just keep going and you just work even harder. And this is just so exciting. And bam, and you get up and you do it again. And we all just share stories about our injuries and how awful they are and how we carried through, and then all the bad things that happened, you know. And the joy started to you know, really be drained from the skating, because I just started to have more fear and pain than joy and the sense of freedom. And it was a real it seems like an exaggeration to say this, but it was a kind of existential moment of like, I love this. Why are you taking this away from me? And similar, and so parallel was my marriage, which was like, I thought this is what I wanted. You know, I've got these two homeschooled kids and we live in the country and we have our goats, and this is like everything that I thought I was going to want. And the friend who was also a healer for me, who I was going to regularly, who referred me to the Qigong teacher, he said, I think you might like this work. And the Qigong was like, well, the polar opposite of, you know, competitive figure skating.
Absolutely.
And the slowing down, and like Amy said, the sense of energy and the awakening of sensitivity. And this was where I encountered the power of the yin, because my choice, because it was a choice I made at some point as a little one to go yang, to go yang team, was like, that's the safe choice. That's where you get attention. That's where you get praise. That's where everybody sees you in a good, you know, in the way that I wanted to be seen. And that's also how you are safe in the world, because you're in charge.
Yeah.
And yeah. And
Yeah.
and meanwhile,
No.
the yin is, yeah, right. Anybody, I have an amen out there. So and this is to the expense of the yin, which to me, the yin was weak. And
Right.
my mother was in a lot of depression when I was growing up, and she seemed very, in a kind of victim sort of I hesitate to say this because she's amazing. but this was my experience when I was growing up. And it was like, that's not the way to go, you
I had
know?
I had a
So,
similar experience
yeah,
watching my mom kind of fall apart during a divorce. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm never going to be the victim. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to be weak. I'm not like all of these things. I'm like, I'm going to just go conquer the world, right? I'm not going to fall apart. And you just do a lot later. It
right,
catches up with
right.
you.
You just carry
Yeah.
it inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that whole aspect of my life and my identity was undeveloped, and I didn't think it was powerful. And so when I started practicing Qigong, which of course is inherently embodied, you know, Amy, you were
Right.
talking about the body. It's like you're
Yeah.
feeling it with your body, you're in the energy space, and then you're in the magic space that starts to happen. And it was like the more I slowed down and got more sensitive, the more I was like, oh my God, the
Live.
yin is huge. And
Yeah.
this is actually why we're afraid of it. This is
Yeah.
actually why our, you know, the patriarchal system came to being, God knows how long ago, and has been carrying on, because this is way
Powerful.
more powerful than we know. Yeah.
Wow.
And when we
Wow.
don't have the skill and we're not like acclimatized to the power of the yin, it's terrifying. And it feels like we're falling apart, and it feels like we're going to die, and it feels like, and we have to surrender to such a degree that we have to let go of control, and we have to recognize that we're not in control, which is actually where the deck came in eventually. Because the deck, these cards that I created, it's like, here is your guide to getting to know the yin, you know.
Oh,
So when you pull the liminal card, which says, you know, this is the in between place, the place of neither here nor there. You know, you aren't yet, and you know, you haven't yet begun, but you're no longer. It's like that is actually a location that you
yes.
can identify with, go, here I am. And that card ends with saying, you know, this is a state of grace. You're in a state of grace, actually. Um, and and it's a place of power and a state of grace. So, and my teaching, so that whole shift in my life led me into the healing arts, which so I'm a craniosacral therapist, also biodynamic craniosacral therapist. But I'd never done any of those healing practice. You know, I'd gone to healers for many years,
Right.
alternative healers, but I never saw myself that way. I never aspired to that. And so yes, it was a complete life change for me. And it went very fast. It was like boom, 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 boom. We're now doing this. And of course I realized, like, oh, I'm seeing the threads of this, you know, that have been running through my entire life, you know, as you do.
Right. Absolutely.
I think for me, when I started to connect with the yin side of myself, it made it really uncomfortable to return to the yang side. I was like, oh, I don't want to overdo. And now it just, you automatically want to tap back in. When prepping for this call, I was like, part of this work of the yin for me is tapping into this stillness. But the paradox of stillness is actually in the stillness, you awaken this aliveness that is beyond anything you've ever experienced. Like you have limited, your kidneys as your life force. Like you have this, if you're relying on your own will for life force, like you have limited resources. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I can't. And especially when you're almost 52 years old, you just hit this wall where you don't have any more gas in the tank. And so to understand yin as this way of recharging, but the stillness isn't stillness. Like it is, you have to be still but there's so much life force that comes through when you invite that in, when you invite in connecting to the yin, to recharging, to regenerating, to being held. And so, yeah, it's just, and then once you get there, you're like, oh, I never want to go back to
I love
overdoing
that
it.
Yes.
description to
So-
me is like that stillness as an active process, almost like I have an electric car, you know, the car's out there, but it's charging up.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to do anything to be charged.
Mhm.
It's just being still, but it's an active process in some way. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, this is where, when you dive deep enough into the yin, you hit the yang again. And then you keep going and you hit the yin again. You know, so
Yeah.
what feels like stillness is actually like, oh my God, look at all this that's happening here. And then, you know, another layer. And so then you really get connected to like the truth of the universe.
That cycle, right? The return of the sun, the
Yes.
dark, and then the return of the sun. Like I'm seeing like the yin yang symbol, like you are making it 3D in what you're talking about. Just like Kristen said, it's like we see it as this flat, but then all of a sudden I'm seeing the swirling energy and the 3D energy and how the one bites the other's tail, you know, like it's this constant cycle in and out of that. But you can't, I think so much of Western society and values just has us the yang, 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 you know, so you never do that recharge. And so you tap into your body's resources instead of these natural resources that we can connect into and to receive.
Yeah.
These infinite resources,
Yeah,
actually.
exactly.
Yeah. And it's funny because the actual hitting of that space for me, I remember finally recognizing it as liminal space. I was like, I don't know where I am. Like this is a place, you know? And I remember that feeling that Amy, you're talking about. I couldn't even get back. Nothing was working for me to get back into the yan space. I could not bring myself close to it because what was ahead of me was so big. And I'm only recently feeling somewhat connected to it again or seeing it somewhere in my experience. But it's so different now. And that's fascinating too. So it's a beautiful journey. And it's a long periods of time. I don't feel like I bounced through this. I feel like it was this long period and now it's another long period. And I'm sure it's different for everyone.
Well, I love how we're all just naming the felt experience, you know, the lived experience of this.
Yeah.
And I really think we have the ratio backwards, you know, because how I've come to think of the yin, my teacher used to call it the source and the return. And so to me, it's like we are all yin until there's a moment of action and then we return back to the yin. Oh, there's another moment of action and then we return to the yin.
Interesting.
It's not yang, 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 yin, yang, yang, you know.
Right.
That's not the way it works. And so there is when you start to feel this energy in yourself and start to recognize it as the source that it is and as the place to return from, the yang does become kind of unbearable. Like it only feels great when it's really ready to emerge. And then it completes itself. And then it's like, great, I'm going back in, you know, to the inexhaustible resource now.
Yeah.
Which I like because it gives me hope that I will have something that I can bring forth in a way, you know. There's a little bit of hope, that energy that comes forward. And I'm only recently, I've been doing some work with Kundalini rising to help myself just, you know, energetically every day have a little bit of something coming
Mhm.
forth. So, is that, when you think of Kundalini, is that all part of this same dialogue? In
It's definitely connected. Interestingly, that's not a path that I've gone down, like that worldview. So I'm not an authority on that. What I
Yeah.
will say is that it is that sexual energy, it's that creative life force energy that's rising. In the practices that I learned and teach, the movement is actually it's an orbital movement. So the energy rises, but then it returns back to the yin, and it actually ends in the yin. So
Right.
it's not an up, 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 up movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a bias that the up, up, up is away from the earth, is inherently yang. It takes us a lot of
Yeah.
people into their brains. It brings a lot of energy to the mind. And that there's sort of a subtle value that we have to have our energy up. And what it really needs to do is it needs to be able to cycle through. That's actually what cultivates and makes the energy more potent and reliable, is that it can actually move through all the phases and return again.
I love that.
And I may have a misunderstanding of how people work with the Kundalini, but like anything, the way I've seen it, at least in how it's been translated, I know that it creates a kind of,
Yes.
It feels linear to me.
Yeah, I was
the
just
other-
curious.
yeah. And if it feels good for you, great, but just something to pay attention to. Because the other
Yeah.
thing is, this direction is moving towards fire, actually, is the element, really. And that can
Right.
become very drying. In other words, it can become very depleting
Yes.
of the water energy.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, yeah, that's another fascinating thing to me. The sacral energy, our creative energy, is actually associated with the element of water, which to me is so, like, my mind is like, that can't be right.
Fire,
Like, where's the
right.
fire? I kind of did 2 6-week things back to back with Daven, and I was swimming all the time. And it was so interesting to bring that knowledge into the pool and say, like, I'm kind of cultivating my creative energy here in water, because I'm an Aries, I'm a fire sign. I'm like, I create, create all the time. But to like connect with creative energy with water and the flow, and like, I was like, it was kind of mind blowing to me, and it still is. I still want to like, but it also to me brings balance into the creative process. So there is a spark of creativity always for me, how I experience my creative process. But there is the other side of that, is to truly stay in the creative flow. You have to invite the water element into that to temper the fire, because the fire energy is going to burn itself out. So I don't like, or if it burns too hot, you can't sustain it. So it's like this idea of the balance of fire and water and creativity that is a really cool concept.
Yin yang.
Yeah.
and the other element that is supporting the water element is the earth.
Earth.
So the grounding is the first thing that we do in my practice. And when you're talking about sexual energy, life force energy, creative energy, it needs to be grounded in the earth. So that's the other thing about, if the energy is moving up and away from the earth, there's not that sense of like, we're in our bodies, we're connected to the earth, we're in this world, we're connected to the wisdom of the earth.
Yeah.
And that's the grounding underneath this whole thing that you just described, Amy, is so beautifully. I love it.
I was wondering if this might be a nice time for you to lead us in a practice that maybe ties in that whole cycle of energy.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And then I'd love to work with your deck after that.
Okay. So we'll start with settling in to whatever you're sitting on. Listeners, you can sit upright. You can also just let yourself recline, have a nice supported position where you can relax your body, but also feel your connection to the earth. And just naming the earth, the body of the earth, the existential stability of the earth, the ancient wisdom and presence of the earth, the cycles of the earth. Feel the presence of the earth in your own body, in your bones, in the rivers of your blood, in your cycles, in your emotions, your weather systems. And in the movement of your breath. Breath can be simple and soft. And with this connection to the earth, I invite you to feel held by the earth. So your body can soften. You can gently let go. You can gently release even a little bit of control, of gripping, of efforting. Parts of you can begin to soften. Your belly can soften to receive the breath. Your muscles can soften to release effort. Your thoughts can soften. Your heart can soften. And your sex can soften. Held by the earth. You may even begin to feel a kind of movement in your body that feels fluidic. A gentle opening, expansion, like a tide coming in. And then a gentle releasing, a kind of letting go, a drawing inward, like the tide going out to the sea. And with this subtle fluidic movement, you can actually begin to take up more space, just as water will. It will move into all the available little pockets and curves of the riverbank. Within this spaciousness, we can allow our sexual soul to come into awareness. Whatever that means for you, for your sexual soul in this moment. It may be a very subtle sensation in your body, not necessarily in your genitals, but it might be. It may be an image, a beautiful picture that is forming itself before your internal gaze. It may just be a gentle shift in your nervous system. It may be a knowing, sense of presence. And nothing needs to happen here. So there's no demand or expectation. There's no time frame. There's no hurry. Your sexual soul can take all the time and space it wants. And I invite you to trust this part of yourself. Even if you don't understand it, find it confusing, even if you're not sure if you like it, or what it means. Just invite you to be with your sexual soul with curiosity. I invite you to be innocent. With this seed of your being planted within you by heaven at the moment of your conception. This is your unique energy. This is your unique blueprint. Your unique map of your destiny. Throughout this journey of your life. I invite you to receive this fully in your body, your flesh and blood and bones and breath, your sex, your heart, the soles of your feet, your brain, your skin. And as you notice your body, invite you once again to notice the weight, the mass, the space of your body, and its connection to the earth. You are an integrated whole, walking on this earth, a creative sexual being. And when you're ready, you can take a deeper breath, or a yawn, or a deep sigh. And let that bring you into some gentle movement. Actually opening your eyes.
Wow.
And from this space, we can pull a card.
I thought we could each pull one. Why don't you pull one first, David? Okay.
So I pulled attraction.
Oh,
Oh, I love that.
oh,
A
a
great card.
beautiful, like red flower. It looks, what kind of flower is it? An iris? It looks like an iris.
It could be.
Okay.
It's a very sexual looking flower
It
is
is.
what it is.
Definitely.
So the card that Kristen picked is surrender.
Oh,
It's
wow.
And it reminds
Wow.
me a little bit of how we were describing the yin yang sign in all of its swirling energy. So, and then
Amazing.
Oh, yes.
I have harmony, which is in a beautiful figure eight, two figures, but the figure eight, but that's still that infinite spiral of energy. So, yeah. Yeah, maybe we just read the cards. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Maybe.
Attraction. Be like the flower planted in the earth, opening her petals, emitting her irresistible perfume, revealing her succulent insides. Come. The pollinators come from miles around. They pick up the signal, the scent. They see the colors. They are drawn in, drunk with the spell. A sensual calling. This is the power of the yin to attract.
That is beautiful. And it's so perfect for this conversation.
know. It really is.
Yes.
We probably should have shared a little bit, Kristen and I, about our experience with your practice. But there was a moment in that practice for me that I was just like, this is me. Like, this is me. Like this aliveness, like a subtle sexual sensation through the body. And I kept feeling like I'm safe here, but like safe in all of my expression. Like this is who I am without anybody telling me that I have to be anything else other than me right now. And to feel that in terms of the attraction card, it's like, this is the place I want to attract from, like everything, not just partnership, but attract my life's work to, like, this is me. This is me. So like that, I love the card in terms of how I experienced the practice that you shared with us.
Oh,
That's
And I want
wonderful.
to say that this card, yes, it very much has a sexual, tone to it. But this is an antidote to the yang way of doing things.
Yes.
When it's like, well, how do I, it's like you come into your fullness and you open your petals and it arrives.
And you
Yeah.
attract.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
it comes to you, right?
Yeah.
And the power of that magnetism and owning your own self, like that seed of heaven. Like I like that when you say those words, I just feel everything in me come alive. It's like, yeah, I am divine, and waking that up in me and like, yes. So yeah, Kristen, can you see why I was so excited to have Daven
Yes,
on?
I absolutely can. I mean, I think we've read a couple of the card meanings with some pulls that we've done, and I've just been astounded is the word where the meaning, the written meaning is also just so expansive and expanding. And certainly that particular card is exactly what I was feeling is this is the way to yin. This is attraction is about the opening and the being, and it's 111. Just hit 111. Anyway.
Love it.
Okay, so I'll read my card and then
Mm.
I'll share a bit about my experience. So surrender, it's beautiful. Surrender. Let go, honey. Surrender to pleasure. Surrender to the unknown. Surrender when it's easy. Surrender when you're gripping the wheel of control. Notice, see the clouds in the sky? The birds coasting on the currents of the air? How did those clouds come to be? How do the birds stay aloft with so little effort? Who brings the rain and turns the earth in her seasons? Not you, my love. Your control grip does not turn the wheel of life. Surrender to those who know better. You're safe here.
There it is. Those were the words you just said.
No. And then even so, let go, honey. Like the fact that the honey came in after this attraction card and the bees and just this like you could almost read it separately. It's like let go and just feel that word honey, just like
Oh, nice.
yeah. So it's yeah.
I have a lot of connection with the words here because first of all, I work with the Wheel of Life. So that's really funny to me. It's funny as in wow. And I frequently look out onto the backyard and think about how the birds are just birding with no effort. They just do. The clouds. These words are words I say. And
Wow.
and I have a hard time surrendering. And in fact, this week, Amy and I stumbled upon surrender multiple times, the Hanging Man card and another an Odin card that was all about just letting go, surrender. And so this is my work, so it's very pertinent that I received it, and thank you for it. And I in the meditation that we did together, I have never once connected with my sexual soul. And in fact, I have a very specific thing that happens when I do feel myself open my crown and get connected with something larger. And it's kind of this pulsing eyeball almost. But today it was totally different. It's the first time that it hasn't been the eyeball, and it was more of a waving, and it was a pulsation, and it spoke the words of feeling the tide coming at the same exact time, I was like, what is this pulsing? And it was just beautiful. And I feel like I went deeper in that experience than I've ever allowed myself to go.
Oh, wow.
Completely
Mm.
different way to get into it.
Mm.
So that was really magnificent for me. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Wow.
It's wonderful.
So
Mm.
I love that you had that experience, Kristen, because I don't know, I just love Daven and her work. So yeah.
Thank you.
So I picked harmony, and it has the infinity sign under it. The pendulum at one extreme must swing back to the other side. And then gradually, as it continues its sway back and forth, a settling occurs. There is harmony. Soften your edges, get rooted in the earth, pause in the center, quiet and alert, prepared for action or rest. That liminal space of in between, of harmony.
Wow. These are so great. It's so interesting now to have had a little time with you to understand the layers, some of the layers of meaning, just
Yeah.
because, just spending an hour. I mean, I can't imagine spending more time and how deep this goes. It's really
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's such amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. God, it's so great to be able to be in this space with the three of us in this space together. I mean, it seems to, I just trust the yin. The yin is, this is what happens when you open up the power of the yin.
Yep.
Right.
It's so interesting just to witness in my own body when we call in the yin or we call in our sexual souls, like how it expands my energy field. And it's just like, well, yeah, now I feel like I can go do things. Like yesterday, I was so depleted, and I'm like, I can't do life. Like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to rest. And then all of a sudden, in, 20 minutes of a practice, I was like, oh, here I am. Here's my energy source. I feel expanded, inspired. It's just, I feel like me. I think that that's just like this unique creature that is me.
Oh,
Yeah. So thank you. I mean,
hallelujah.
I know. I know. And
I don't know where all this churchy stuff is coming from. It sounds like it fits though.
I also want to notice in you, Daven, this is something that I struggle with, receiving compliments and being received. I mean, for you to be in this space with us and to have us talking about your work and your gifts and the treasure of this deck and the wisdom of your work, and to be able to receive it like so openly and not dismiss it. So many of us are like, you look pretty to get, oh no, like I just, whatever. We dismiss so much of the receiving. And I just want everybody listening to notice how gracious Daven receives being
I
in
agree.
this space with us. It's hard to be where you are. And I mean, I admire you so much, and I've gained so much from my work with you. And for you to receive that is really a beautiful thing to witness.
Oh, thank you.
Right. What do you say to that, right?
Yep, you're like, nothing.
Well, I mean, I could say different things about it, but thank you. Thank you. And yes, it's so, well, it's interesting because the image that's coming to mind is actually a water and an earth image, which is the water as it flows, it's also being absorbed by the earth. if the water's just running off the surface, right, then there's no feeding of the earth, there's no nutrient, there's no moisturizing the earth. And so, and what I'm feeling right now with you calling that out is that, I mean, so much of this is like, when I call myself a priestess, it's because I'm in service to this energy as I understand it and as I open to it and as it comes through me. So part of it is, of course, not me, right? It's not about me, and I don't know where these cards came from. And another part is very much me, and I do know exactly, where the cards came from, right? So I'm just seeing how there's this river, or this movement of water that I've gotten carried by, that's carrying me, and I get to absorb some of that
And
and
it
get to
nourishes
receive
you.
it and be nourished by it. Yeah. And that the earth element of that is also like, I'm standing in this. I stand for this. This is my home, in the world. This connects with my essence, my body. And also that I have been witness, what I'm witnessing with the two of you, and what I'm witnessing in our field, and what I sense the people who get to see this and listen to it will experience. It's like, yes, yes.
Yeah.
You are the embodiment of the practices you teach. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Thank you. And it is by no means a complete, by the way. Of course, it's an ongoing, not perfect, in process, etc.
Right.
So, yeah.
But that's part of this work, is to show up where you are in your process,
Well,
So,
exactly. And that is that's part of how we can be in our wholeness, is like, yeah, this is not, this includes the mess,
Yep.
all the mess is here also, in the
Yeah.
best way.
Yeah, we talk about that frequently.
Are the parenthetical name of our podcast is the Messy Mystics. It's just
Yes,
like,
I love
here
that.
we
Oh my
are.
God.
This is
That's
who we
so-
are in
Yep.
our, so, but that's one of the most profound things of stepping onto the spiritual path, is that accepting that it's messy a lot, like, and that's part of the self-acceptance piece. It's like,
Well,
but it
and
is
that's the
human.
yin. The yin is a
Yeah.
mess.
The unorganized part of
Yeah.
ourselves, and
Muddy,
to embrace
bloody,
that.
unpredictable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, well, I guess we should probably wrap up, even though we could talk for 2 more hours. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for being here with us today. And if you want to find, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you want to find Daven on Instagram, it's at Power of the Yin, at Daven Lee, and at Hello Sexual Soul.
Yes, the first one is at Power of the Yin Oracle.
Okay.
Might even be at Power of the Yin Oracle deck, I think.
Okay.
But
I will
they're
post them in the podcast,
Yes.
in the podcast summary anyway, but I just thought I wanted to make sure people knew where to find you.
I know I mentioned it earlier, but that I'm offering another Hello Sexual Soul 6-week online series in January. And this time I'm opening it up to men and all genders. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I have a lot of beautiful men showing up in my practice right now, and it just feels time to open up that space to both and see what happens. That's
Wonderful.
my edge right now. So
That's wonderful.
I've already said it, but I can't say it more, that this work with Daven is life-changing. So if you have it in your schedule to join her in her January session, I highly recommend it. So
yes. And of course, I also
Daven-
do one-to-one work.
Yep.
Yes.
Couples work. Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time. You've been more than generous with us with it all.
Oh my God. Thank you.
I love getting to know you, and getting to know how you came into this work is really special. And I really look forward to also checking out your course, because honestly, it really sounds like something that I could use right now. So I will be looking into that as well. Thank you so much. This has been really truly heartwarming and opening for me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast. And I'm happy to come back again, be a regular guest.
Yay! Absolutely.
It is
Absolutely.
so much fun to
When
play
we were
with you too.
talking, I was like, we need to have David on a regular basis, because this practice so informs what the podcast is about. But I think it really brings the embodiment practice for me. It's like, I think Kristen and I are very good at working with our spirit guides and feeling guided and like inviting in that magic, but to like really feel it and ground it in the body. I think you do such amazing work around that.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
wonderful. Thank
you.
you.
Come take a peek with me. I see another side.
Thanks for joining us. Until our next coffee date, may Spirit lead you into all the magic.
Another side.